Good morning. Hope you slept well last night. See, you're having a book sale. You finally figured out which ones you want to keep and which ones you want to sell. That's good. I hope I hope your kids picked out some good ones to keep. What are you even going to do with that basement if you don't have that big library? I guess the boys have their weight room down there and TV. All right, it's chapter 25. Hazel Marie and I followed Mr. Pickens through the garage and out the back door, our breath condensing in front of us as we hit the cold air. I was astounded at what was out there, and I'm here to tell you I've never seen anything like it. We came out into an open-sided covered space like a 2-story double carport with what looked like one of those huge 18-wheeled moving vans parked underneath. It was painted the most awful shade of turquoise with Jerry Johnson Racing slashed across the trailer part in bright yellow, outlined in black and white. Garish was all I could say for it. As if that wasn't bad enough, there was Mr. Johnson wearing a jacket that was close to Joseph's coat of many colors as I could imagine. It was of a shimmery turquoise material, nylon most likely, although it had so many decals, patches, and emblems on it that you could hardly see the background color. Junior Landscaping was the featured advertisement, with SK Power Equipment, somebody's motor oil, and somebody else's service station, and Bucky's Drive-In blinded my eyes. Add to all that, there were black and white checks running up and down the sleeves. The man was a walking billboard. And Mr. Pickens wasn't much easier on the eyes in a borrowed coat, since Hazel Marie was still wrapped up in his. Mr. Johnson had the whole back side of the trailer laid out on the ground, and before I knew it, Curtis came around the corner in my car and drove right up to the door and stopped. "Watch this here, little Lloyd," Mr. Johnson bellowed, though he didn't need to do it at all, for little Lloyd was standing right beside him, watching the undertaking with his mouth open. As indeed I was, wondering what they were doing with the only car I had to my name. Mr. Johnson pulled a lever, or pushed a button, or did something mechanical, and lo and behold, the back door of the truck began to rise, taking my car with it, until it was way up over our heads. "What?" I wheezed, trying to catch my breath. "What in the world are they doing?" "It's a double-decker transporter," Mr. Pickens said, enjoying, I do believe, my consternation. "Jerry hauls his race truck on the top deck, and they're going to put your car right behind it. Watch now." When the door got to the top deck, it stopped, and the driver moved my car right on inside, anchoring it good and tight. Then he rode the door back down to the ground. "Load up, boys," Mr. Johnson yelled. "We're going to hit the road. Hey, Miss Julia, sorry I let my Winnebago go on ahead of us. You could have rode in style, but you ain't going to fuss about this, I guarantee you. Might not be too legal, but just keep those blinds closed, and who's going to know? Come on now." Mr. Pickens took Hazel Marie's arm and helped her into the lower deck of the trailer, while little Lloyd followed her, eager to look around inside. "Your turn," Mr. Johnson bellowed in my ear. "Hop on in." Between Mr. Pickens and Mr. Johnson, I found myself lifted up over the threshold and inside what looked like a garage on wheels. There was a narrow aisle between rows of cabinets holding every kind of tool and hose and machine you could think of. Mr. Johnson came behind us, closing and latching cabinet doors as he went. "Keep on going to the front," he yelled. "I'll get y'all settled, then we'll head on out." "What is all this stuff?" I whispered to Mr. Pickens. "Everything needed to repair or rebuild a race truck at the track. Would you believe they've got 4 motors ready to go if they need them?" He put his hand on my back as we moved towards the front. Yes, I did believe it. I saw enough plunder in that van to open a filling station if you had a mind to. About 3/4 of the way down the aisle, it took a little turn and went up 2 steps. We walked into a small sitting room, complete with aquamarine leather sofas built into 2 sides of the space, a small table, and a wall of all kinds of electronic paraphernalia, including a television set, a fax machine, a telephone, computer, and I don't know what all. My word, I said, astounded at the array before me. Got a satellite hookup too, Mr. Johnson sang out. Refrigerators right under there with plenty to drink. The John's around the corner. Make yourself at home, folks, and call me on the phone if you need anything. I'm going to put this mother in gear and head for the mountains. Mr. Johnson, I said, putting my hand on his arm as we started to leave, don't take any chances. That sleet's still coming down out there. Well, thank you for your worry, but a little sleet's never stopped me before. This here truck's got gears it don't even know about, and enough tires to hold it to the road. I know you need to get home, and I'm going to take you, and neither Bigelow's Bunch nor a Smoky's going to stop us. When he left, I asked Mr. Pickens what a Smoky was. Highway Patrol, he said. Then we heard the door of the van being closed and latched, locking us inside the back of something that looked like a circus truck, along with, according to Mr. Pickens, extra generators, engines, cool-down units, utility carts, pit carts, crash carts, toolboxes, nuts and bolts, bins, body paint, oil lines, fuel lines, brake lines, springs, and shocks, to say nothing of a racing truck and my car overhead, which were the only things I would recognize if I saw them. I leaned down and looked out the window, seeing Mr. Johnson swing up into the cab. He started the motor, and I could feel the rumble of it under my feet. Sit here by me, Miss Julia, little Lloyd said. It might be kind of rough till we get on the interstate. The child was beside himself with the thrill of checking out our highly unusual conveyance. I took a seat beside him on one of the sofas, noticing that Mr. Pickens took his right beside Hazel Marie. He was still looking down in the mouth after considering the kind of men who'd been in her life. Little did she know that there was another of the same ilk sidling up to her again. Why, I said, rooting around on the sofa, there are no seat belts. Then I hushed up about it, since that was clear proof we weren't supposed to be riding back there. Hold my hand, little Lloyd. As the big truck pulled out from under the carport, I could hear a ting of sleet against the sides of the van. Looking out the windows, I saw sagging tree limbs coated with ice and began to have second thoughts as to the wisdom of our journey. But I closed the blinds as Mr. Johnson had told us to, deciding that it was too late to back out of it now. And of course it was all for the best, since getting home was what we had to do. Mr. Pickens sat across from us, talking soft and low to Hazel Marie. She nodded now and again, occasionally giving him a sad kind of smile. I worried that he might be pulling out some of that manly charm he had so much of, and which he used to get whatever he wanted. I'd seen him in action, and so far I had not seen any woman with enough immunity to resist him, except me, of course, and I intended to see to it that Hazel Marie did too, after he got us home, that is. The truck lurched as it turned onto the main highway, picked up speed, and headed towards Charlotte. I hope that Mr. Johnson was right when he said the thing could handle icy roads, because when I peeked through the blinds there was hardly any traffic, and not a few cars and pickups stranded on the roadside and in ditches. We were in the hands of the Lord and Jerry Johnson. I prayed to the one and put my trust in the other. Mr. Pickens, I said, more sharply than I'd intended, for a sudden scary thought had occurred to me. Have you given any thought to the fact that Wilson T. knows exactly where Hazel Marie lives, and if Bigelow can't find whatever he's looking for, he might come after her again? He and Wilson T. could be sitting there waiting on us. He nodded. I've thought of it, but you said you need to get there, so I figure we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I thought for a minute, and then said, but if you're going to Phoenix with Mr. Johnson, that leaves us alone to deal with them. I don't like the thought of that. I'll talk to Peavy and some of the others I know. They'd like nothing better than to get their hands on Bigelow, since their raid was a washout. They'll be watching out for him, so you'll be okay. I nodded, reassured that Mr. Pickens was still thinking ahead on our behalf. The little room had begun to heat up, so I came out of my coat and helped little Lloyd out of his. We had come into Charlotte by that time, as evidenced by all the stopping and going the truck was doing. The streets seemed some better, and as I peeked out the window, I saw that the sand trucks were out and about, trying to make the streets passable. About the time we got through Charlotte, and back on the interstate, where the riding was smoother, Mr. Pickens stood up and said, "I've got an idea to pass the time. Let me see if I can find some cards." He rummaged around in several drawers and came out with a deck of cards and a round container that held poker chips. Not that I immediately recognized it as such, not having the gambling habit, but he announced, "Let's play some poker." Little Lloyd was eager, surprising me that he knew how to play, and Hazel Marie hesitantly agreed. Mr. Pickens got them situated around the tiny table, wrote out what beats what on a scrap of paper for Hazel Marie's benefit, and said, "Come on over here, Miss Julia, and sit in with us. We'll play dealer's choice, but I'm ruling out strip poker no matter what you say." Well, I knew when I was being teased, but I had no taste for cards, especially the gambling kind. "Thank you all the same, but I'd rather watch if you don't mind." "Suit yourself," little Lloyd said, doubling over with laughter. "Get it, Miss Julia? Suit yourself." I smiled at little Lloyd's quickness of mind as Mr. Pickens grinned and rubbed his hand over the boy's head. He shuffled the cards, slapped them down in front of little Lloyd, and said, "Name your game, sport." I made myself comfortable in the corner of the sofa while they started their game. Hazel Marie sounded willing, but half-hearted at first, but gradually she got into the fun the other two were having. I began to doze off, lulled by the easy rocking of the truck, as it made good time on the interstate. Mr. Johnson had certainly been right. So far, the heavy truck was doing just fine in spite of the road conditions. Fitting my head into the corner of the sofa, I drifted in and out of sleep, hearing bits and pieces of the game in progress. "Hit me," Mr. Pickens said. "Dealer takes two. Everybody in? Raise you one. I'll see you. I'm out. Chicken." "Let's see what you're so proud of, Mr. Pickens." With a snap of cards on the table, Mr. Pickens said, "Pair of jacks." "Ha!" Hazel Marie laughed. "Don't send boys to do a man's job." Mr. Pickens picked up the cards, saying, "Loser says, 'Deal, damn it, deal. 5-card stud. Pairs are better to open." I heard the swish of cards and the chink of chips. "Pot's not right," little Lloyd said. "Oh, it's me. Sorry." "Read 'em and weep," Mr. Pickens said. "What'll you have?" "One," Hazel Marie said. "Oh, me," Mr. Pickens moaned. "She's at it again." Little Lloyd laughed. "You're really getting the cards, Mama." Hazel Marie, sounding pleased with herself, said, "Well, you know, lucky in cards, unlucky in love. I'll see you and raise you two." "Jesus," Mr. Pickens said, "I'm out." "My turn," little Lloyd said, gathering up his cards as Hazel Marie added to the stack of chips in front of her. "High-low deuces and one-eyed jacks are wild." I heard the snap of the cards he dealt, listened to their opens and raises and calls. After a while, Mr. Pickens said, "Okay, boys and girls, down and dirty." "See you," I heard Hazel Marie said, "and raise you 3. "Damnation, woman, what you got going on over there?" Hazel Marie giggled. "It'll cost you to find out." Right about then, I had a mind to put a stop to the game, since it seemed to be getting out of hand. But on second thought, and at a quick glance, I saw that Hazel Marie was smiling for a change. Little Lloyd was paying rapt attention, and Mr. Pickens was behaving himself. I let them alone and dropped on off to sleep. And that's the end of chapter 25. Look and see how many chapters there are in here. 35. So we have 10 more.
10 more days to go.
10 more days to go. You have to let me know if you want me to read something else. I would love to after that. I'll let you pick this time. See you later. Bye.